Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Kingdom Age Education. My name is Lisa Annabelli. Thank you so much for joining us. We are in the final installment of our Colossians series, and we are calling it Colossians 4, even though we're going to start in Colossians 3:18 because we ended in 3:17 last week on purpose because the subject matter demanded that we start in 3:17 rather than chapter 4, which, if I could just make a comment to Bible editors that may be listening, when you read a scroll in context, there are natural breaks, and Colossians 4:1 is not a good break. If I was a Bible editor, I would have started chapter 4 with 3:18 because that kind of begins this tags almost like a new paragraph. It begins a new paragraph in Paul's conversation in the scroll of Colossians, even though we need to remember as we go into this conversation today that it's all in the context of the whole scroll of Colossians, of which we just completed a great conversation about putting off the old self and putting on the new self. We do not want to forget that as we go into this discussion today, because what happens is a lot of times when we hear preaching, what they're going to tell you is not in the context of putting on the old self and or putting on the new self and putting off the old self. So what I want to do is remind you that the book of Colossians is written during a Roman culture in a Mediterranean or Macedonian city near Turkey. Now, the reason that is important is because Colossians 3:18, where we're starting today, says, "Wives, be subject to your husbands." Now, the reason it's important to understand the cultural context is because Paul was dealing with a Roman culture that was hierarchical in nature, and he was talking to a people that had to remain in a cultural context, but was trying to extract them out of a Roman culture and enter them into a new kingdom culture. So when he says, "Wives, be subject to your husbands," if they weren't subject to their husbands in a Roman culture, it would have looked like they were rebellious women. Now, that is so important to understand because a rebellious woman in that culture would have looked like their husbands were not being respected. But Paul adds a kingdom tagline that if you don't understand where Paul was preaching into, you wouldn't understand why he added the kingdom tagline, "as is fitting in the Lord." Roman culture wouldn't have said that. Think of the Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic Church, everything is hierarchical. And as we look at these 6 groups of people that Paul is going to talk to, you're going to realize the hierarchical nature. Wives, be subject to husbands. Children, be submissive to parents. Slaves, be subject to masters. Be subject, be submissive or obedient. Children, be obedient, and so slaves under masters, children under parents, wives under husbands. This was so Roman. This was so Roman. If you didn't live there, you wouldn't have understood it. The challenge is many in the body of Christ are still more Roman than they are kingdom. They're still empire than they are kingdom. It was a Roman Empire that had a caste system, and women were treated like property, children were treated like servants, and servants were treated like slaves. Understanding this is critical because Paul is about to elevate these people, but he has to do it strategically and he has to do it stealthily, not in order not to disturb the Roman Empire. So he's trying to tell them, don't forget Colossians 3, put on your new self. This would have been huge for husbands. This would have been huge for husbands to understand in the kingdom, you are not allowed to demean your wife. You are not allowed to treat her as less than you, because Paul was consistent in his teaching that women and men were equal. He was super consistent in his teaching about the equality of genders. He was super consistent in his teaching about children honoring their father and mother. He was super consistent in his teaching that slaves were not to be mistreated by their masters. This is a super consistent teaching with Paul. So if we don't understand what Paul is saying when he says, wives, be subject to your husbands, that was Roman. He was saying, don't forget the culture you're in, but we're going to operate under a different kingdom system, even though we are in a Roman empire, a hierarchical empire. So we're going to be strategic and we're going to be stealthy, but we're going to start to change the culture from the inside. But we can't do it quickly, because women, they'll think you're being disrespectful of your husbands if you don't remain subject to them. We don't want to expose the new men that are in a kingdom culture, but a Roman empire. Am I making sense to what I'm telling you? You need to understand this clearly. And the reason you need to understand this is because Paul was bringing in a new way of thinking in an old structure. So when you're operating in a new system, but you're still under an old structure, you can't just automatically go, I am woman, I am free. You're gonna cause the Christians or the new kingdom citizens to be kicked out of the culture in which they're living. And it's actually going to bring death to you, not life, because the Roman empires would have brought those men in and said, what is wrong with you? Why isn't your woman subject to you? Now, you have to also understand we are 2,000 years out of that system. But we have to go back 2,000 years in our thinking to understand, number one, what they were dealing with. And number two, it would give you a gratitude for how far we have actually come. Are we done yet? No, because most of the world is still 2,000 years behind. And much of the church is still 2,000 years behind. Okay? So sometimes you got to be stealthy and strategic in your approach. But I am very blunt and very courageous when I talk to you, because you understand kingdom culture. But as we live in the culture of America, even, you're going to have to be stealthy and strategic in certain religious organizations and denominations. Otherwise, they are going to stone you, or in modern day vernacular, fire you. Does anybody want to comment? Can I get an amen from those that have been involved in religion? Part of the problem with us as Christians is we don't know how to be stealthy and strategic. We want to come in and lamb-blast, take over, control, and say, I'm in charge. And we don't know how to win people over to the gospel of the kingdom, even though we put on our new garment. Think of it like Superman or Spider-Man. Sometimes you've got to be Clark Kent when you're around the religious, even though you know darn well in the kingdom you're Superman. Right? It doesn't change that you're Superman just because you're wearing a suit and tie and black dark rimmed glasses. Underneath that suit and tie, if you rip your shirt open, you know that you are of a different kingdom. But if you are called into the religious system, into a company, into a family, into a culture, sometimes you have to go as Clark Kent. You all know that I've been driving Uber, and I was telling my friends that I've been hanging out with like face to face recently, I said, you would not recognize me if you saw me in my car driving Uber during the day. The reason you wouldn't recognize me is because I'm dressed like Clark Kent. I'm not wearing my Superman costume. I'm not ripping open my shirt. I'm dressed like Clark Kent. And if a multi-millionaire that I pick up at a golf course and drop off at a private jet, true story this week, happens to sit in the back seat of my car, I'm not going to start preaching the gospel of the kingdom. I'm going to just say, yes, sir, no, sir. What can I do for you, sir? And you guys are like, but you should preach. And I'm like, no, he didn't get in my car because he wanted to hear about the kingdom. He got in my car because he wanted to go from a business meeting at the golf course to a private jet so he can get home to his family. My job was to be Clark Kent. It doesn't change that I carry the King of Kings and Lord of Lords inside of me in that car. And then later on in the day, I pick up a 33-year-old man named Matthew from a mental institute who's diagnosed with bipolar and went there to get on a 1-week vacation to get away from his family. Guess what? Clark Kent was not necessarily just driving a rich man to the airport to get on his private jet. Now she was driving a 33-year-old kid that was talking about smoking weed and that the smoke of the temple in him was marijuana. And I've got the smoke of the glory of God burning in me. But you would have never known it because I didn't preach the gospel. I was living in my ghetto suit with my 22 hat and my gold chain around my neck. And he asked me, I kid you not, twice, are you scared? I looked back at him in the back seat and said, do I look scared? Stealthy and strategic. You see, we as the church only know how to wear one outfit. And you cannot be in the world, but not of the world, unless you are able to operate with the world. I didn't open up my ashtray and pull out a doobie. But when he started talking about a roach, he's like, do you know what a roach is? I go, yeah, my clip used to hang from my window, my rear view window. He's like, oh. I said, yeah. So you have to be able to function by design in the midst of humanity without seeking to instantly transform them. Our problem as the church, and we talked as some girls that celebrated a friend of ours over breakfast about weird Christians. Christians are weird. And we've got to stop acting like Superman when they need a Clark Kent. And that may not sound like what Paul was saying, but that's exactly what he's saying. Wives, be subject to your husbands as is fitting to the Lord, because we actually honor God more by meeting people and culture right where they're at, rather than coming in like a wrecking ball, thinking that if we just slam them with the Jesus message, they're going to all of a sudden decide, oh, I've got to have him. That sounds like the greatest thing I've ever heard. When they just stepped out of a mental institute, they just stepped out of a business meeting, they just walked into a storage unit that was their house, they just told me in the car that their family doesn't honor them. I'm talking everyday humanity I'm meeting. And sometimes my kindness is all they need. We have got to learn to be stealthy and strategic, church, if we're going to be successful in transforming our city. Religion has beat them over the head. Most of them have no problem with God. They have a problem with church and religion. And so Paul's like, wives, just be subject to your husbands. That doesn't change that you're not equal. It doesn't change that you have less value. The kingdom culture is not Roman culture. Just act like them in confidence that the kingdom is not them. Just be subject to them. That doesn't mean that you have to submit to an abusive man. That doesn't mean that you should be mistreated, because he's about to say something to the husbands too. Husbands, love your wives. You have to understand how revolutionary that was. Husbands used to buy their wives as property under Roman culture. They used to only sex their wives. And Paul's like, no, this is not your toy that you just call when you need it. Remember, Esther was in a pageant that had to go before the king to find out if she was qualified to be queen, along with other women. Hello. Quit making the Bible some love romantic comedy. There was nothing romantic about what Esther did with Artaxerxes in that day. Oh, you religious, your religious spirits are tripping out on me today. Oh, I'm sorry. Smile at me. I'm still Lisa, the kingdom girl. But I know you guys see this, right? I know you guys have been so dipped in church that we forgot what it was like to live in the world. I did too. But there's a jukebox in me, and you know what? Whatever song they need me to play, I can play it. Because remember what Jesus said? We played a dirge for you, but you didn't mourn. We played a groove for you, but you didn't dance. Come on, kids. God is saying it's time to get jiggy with it. And we're over here going, oh, but we're supposed to be like telling people about Jesus. I am telling people about Jesus. I haven't changed my love for God just because I can relate to humanity. I'm not asking you to be me. I'm just asking you to not forget who you were before you met him. Because our amnesia is actually not working in the marketplace. They don't want our religion. They don't want to sit around a campfire and sing Kumbaya with us. They don't want to shake and fall down. They want somebody to speak life. And if rivers of living water are flowing out of us, that river of living water doesn't have to be couched in the Lutheran hymnal or the Baptist baptismal or the Pentecostal holy bun. It's got to be the words that come out of our mouth to let them know God sees you, God hears you. And you know what? If you need me to be quiet so you can work while I drive, I got your back. I'm driving royalty every day. So Paul says, husbands, love your wives and do not embitter them. Do you understand how kingdom these little taglines are? It's Roman, then kingdom. Roman, and then kingdom. Wives, be subject to your husbands. Roman. As is fitting to the Lord. Kingdom. Husbands, love your wives and do not be embittered against them. Kingdom. Husbands didn't need a Roman statement. They were Roman. So he's like, you know what? Here's your kingdom. Husbands, love your wives and do not be embittered against them. Stop talking down to them. Stop treating them as less than you. Stop expecting them to serve you, but you don't serve them. Because what is love? This is what love is, that you lay down your life for your friends. That's what Jesus said. I know you've never heard this preached in church. That's why we're the kingdom.
Well, Lisa, didn't Paul also say in Corinthians to be all things to all men?
He did.
So
that some may be saved.
Exactly. That's what just what you're saying,
Yeah. Terry, read the Passion Translation, would you? Terry quoted the Passion Translation. I want her to read it.
Okay. It says, let every wife be supportive and tenderly devoted to her husband, for this is a beautiful illustration of our devotion to Christ. Let every husband be filled with cherishing love for his wife and never be insensitive toward her.
Which that is really, really good for Americans. Okay? But if I read the Passion Translation in Africa, that would not fly. Okay? Here's why. Other cultures, African, Asian, South American, even Arabian, those cultures are not as far along as Western cultures when it comes to male-female relationships. That's not a criticism. That's a reality. Okay? So we have to be careful because we take our Western construct and we bring it into places that don't have the same construct. I can read New American Standard, or I can even read King James in Africa and explain African culture, kingdom culture, Arabian culture, kingdom culture, South American culture, kingdom culture. They understand that. The cherish language, they're nowhere near cherish because they're still so Roman. Don't forget, the Roman Empire still got a hold in the East, even stronger than it does in the West. And if you've never lived in the East, you've never been married to anybody in the East, never been to South America, never been around the South American people, they're very hierarchical. Very hierarchical. The irony, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pastor Kathy, the irony of African Americans is that it's a matriarchal culture versus patriarchal. Correct, Pastor Kathy? And the matriarchal culture of African Americans means the oldest woman in the family is the most honored woman in the whole family. Correct, Pastor Kathy? But in African cultures, it's patriarchal. Correct? The elders are all men. Women are honored, don't get me wrong, but not above men. So African Americans being in America have flipped the script a little bit in that way. But every culture is out of balance hierarchically, and the kingdom is trying to make us compatible. Doesn't mean we don't honor each other. Doesn't mean we don't have different roles and responsibilities, leaders and followers and leaders. But in the kingdom, there's neither male nor female, Jew nor Greek, slave nor free. Okay? So we have been taught in church, husbands are over their wives. Is your head over your body? It's not, because the only time your head is supposedly over your body is when you're standing up. But when you're laying down, the head is not over the body. And what is love? Not stand up. Love is I lay down my life, which means it doesn't matter whether you're the head or the body, we're all laid down lovers, which creates a unity versus a hierarchy. Because hierarchy hinders unity. Honor establishes unity. I can honor without you having to be hierarchical. I don't need you under me or over me for me to honor you. Because in hierarchy, the higher up you are, the less honor you have to show to those beneath you. Because in hierarchy, honor only goes up. In kingdom, honor goes every direction, up, down, in, out, doesn't matter age, gender, position, socioeconomic status. None of that matters in kingdom when it comes to honor. I can honor Pastor Kathy and I can honor Lucy Bell, the baby on this, not on the screen, but listening. I can honor no matter your age, your socioeconomic status, your gender. I can honor Ronnie the same way I honor Dee. I can honor Kyle in the same way that I honor Sonia. It does not matter. And Paul's saying, here's the deal. Wives, subject to your husband as is fitting the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not embitter against them. Children, be obedient to your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing to the Lord. Do you see how the kingdom shifts it from people to the Lord? When you, and he's going to say this, and we're going to get into this in a minute, so I'll hold my tongue on that one. But it's well-pleasing to the Lord for your kids to honor you as mothers and fathers, to obey you. Obedience is for children to obey their parents. Now, this doesn't just go for family relationships, because Paul says you have many teachers, but not many fathers in the Lord. When you find somebody that you consider a father or a mother in the Lord, and you view yourself as a child that's submitted to them out of honor, the number one challenge I face with people that honor my mentor, Miss Rhonda, is they honor her with their lips, but they don't obey her words. You can't call her a mother in the faith and not do what she tells you to do. Pastor Kathy, you probably got a lot of people that call you mama, but how many of them are doing what you say? Right? I mean, I'm just saying, don't call somebody a mother in the faith or a father in the faith unless you're going to obey what they say. Because this is your personal choice to make them that in your life. Don't pay them lip service by calling them a mother if you don't do what they say. My son and I had a mother-son encounter last night. He went to camp all week and he was tired, along with a lot of other kids that were very tired, because I talked to a lot of other parents last night. He told me he wanted to go out to ice cream with a friend of his. And he's leaving this morning. He left this morning at 7:30 a.m. to go on another trip to Florida for 4 days after 5 days at camp. And so he said he was going to be home at 10 o'clock last night. Well, I got on my phone when I was driving home from a wedding at 9:45 and noticed he wasn't home yet. So I sent him a message and I said, hey, are you coming home? Well, no, we haven't even gone to ice cream yet. And I said, you told me that you were going to be home by 10. I'm the mom. I don't usually do this. But as a mother, you see things that children can't see. I knew he had an early morning. I knew that he had a long week. I know that my son's an introvert and that he needs some time alone, and that when he's tired, he gets a little edgy and a little snappy. And now he's about to go spend 4 days on a beach after 7 hours in a car with his friends. So I love his friends enough to make him come home. And I love my son enough to say, get your butt home. You told me 10 o'clock, ice cream or no ice cream, I need you home. He obeyed. And I have great gratitude for his obedience. But he was not happy with me last night. And I said, just blame it on me because I don't want you to look stupid in front of your friend. Tell your friend, Mom said, I have to come home. Because I didn't want him to be embarrassed. But when he got up this morning at 7 a.m. with breakfast ready for him, oh, the hugs, the kisses, and the smiles I received. Because you see, a mom knows what's best for their child. And even though the child is pinched by what the mom is telling them to do, if they obey, they will find the next day that mom knew something they didn't know. So if I call Miss Rhonda my mom or my spiritual mentor and I don't do what she says, I'm not obeying her. And I've obeyed everything she's told me to do. And people wonder why I have so much joy, because I obey my mama. She knows things I don't know about things I don't know. And so when she says, don't do this or do that or say this or don't, I mean, I submit everything I'm going to say in a certain subject to her before I send it. And we as the church have got to learn that when you find a mother or father in the faith that you respect, it's not just about honoring them, saying, oh man, I just love you. Oh, you're my father. You know how many people call Bill Johnson their father and don't do a word that man says? A mother or a father is not a random figure on TV. They are somebody that is physically accessible to you by phone or face. Pastor Kathy got all kinds of people that come to her house and look at her face. And now I'm praying they would obey her words, because they would give her great joy if they only did what she said. Because we come back over and over and over and over again to certain people we consider spiritual mothers and fathers in the faith. You know why you keep coming back to them? Because you didn't do what they told you. You keep coming back boo-hoo-hooing with your boo-boos and your band-aids because you didn't do what they told you. And Paul's saying, children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing to the Lord. All right, let me pause. I've been talking too much. What do you guys think? Before we get to fathers, what do you guys think? Does this make sense? I know you probably have never heard it like this before, but I'm trying to make it applicable because I'm tired of things being so ooh, and we have no application. And we wonder why things aren't working for us. So go ahead, unmute, tell me your thoughts. Have you seen it, heard it, felt it, understand it? Give me something. Tell me, and disagree with me. Remember, we wrestled on this line.
What I'm seeing in it is this, the difference between what I have heard this to be in the past and the way that you're presenting it. To me, this is a much more loving way.
Yes.
Than what the church has, at least what I got from the church in this teaching. Totally.
Good.
More loving, more loving.
I'm so glad you're feeling the love, because I'm kind of course correcting you guys, but I'm doing it in love.
It's more loving. No, it's more loving. Totally.
Good. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you. I'm glad you're hearing it that way.
It's more of the unconditional love of our Father.
Yes. Amen, Terry. Amen. Amen. Anybody else? Comments, thoughts? Sonia?
Yes, ma'am. What I have learned is whenever you go into any ministry, no matter who they are, is you allow them to flow with their flow, and you come up underneath their flow because you want to receive what God wants you to receive from them, not what you just came from. Because what you just came from may not be what they flow in, and it's a new flow. And everybody has different rivers, and everybody flows differently. And you want to receive what God has for you.
Yes, absolutely.
And you
But
can't.
oh, go ahead, Sonia.
I'm sorry.
No,
And
go ahead.
you can't receive if you're trying to sow in that old place that you just came from.
Yes, agreed. But let me add this. Not every ministry leader is a father or a mother.
True.
You can get in their flow and learn from them, and they're still not a father or a mother. Miss Rhonda is a mother to me. I have access. We interact. We have fellowship. As a daughter, I can share intimate thoughts and not be scolded. I can share vulnerable things. I've never called anyone a mother before I met Miss Rhonda. And I don't know that I have what I would consider as a father in the faith yet. I'm just being honest with you guys. I'm just being completely honest. I don't know that I have a man in my life that I consider a father in the faith. Well, that's not true. I do have one. I do, Darlene. His name is Ron. Right, Darlene? I just realized we're going to see him this month. I do have a father in his faith. His name is Ron. He's a 93-year-old man that is a prophet. And I'm going to cry. He calls me daughter. I do have one.
And he moves an incredible love.
Liquid love, Darlene says. Yeah.
Feel it. It is amazing. Yeah.
And I have access to him, and I can call him and text him and ask him questions, and I do what he says. And he actually oh God, I forgot about it. He actually bestowed a father's blessing on me, which I've never had in my life. When you have a mother and a father in the faith, and he's an older 93-year-old white man, and Miss Rhonda is a 60-year-old black woman, and they are the greatest gifts God's ever given me. And there's a difference between ministry, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, and intimacy. There's a vulnerability that comes when you have a real mother in the faith and a real father in the faith. And when you find one, they give you access to their heart. Pastor Kathy, will you say something? I see you nodding and shouting and waving your hanky over there, but I feel like you need to add some value today.
Oh no, I'm enjoying it.
Okay.
You know, okay. That's what's really happening, right? I'm enjoying it. That's
okay.
all. Nothing else. I'm in total agreement. Keep going. The one thing I do want to add is that God told us to be wise as a serpent.
Yes.
But harmless as a dove, right?
As a dove, yes.
So that complements what you're saying to us now, right?
Yeah, that's a great added verse. Good. I love that. I love
kingdom versus the Romans.
Yeah.
Got it? The kingdom. But anyway, I'm going to hush now. I like to talk.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. So then he goes on to say, fathers, do not exasperate your children so that they will not lose heart. When you're a father, you have to know the level that your child can handle. My friend Jana says to me often, and even said to us yesterday, you have to feed people according to their appetite and how much they can digest. I share things with you guys in this group that I can't share on a large level because they can't handle the meat that we serve up on these Saturday mornings. You guys know how to chew the meat now. You're not choking on it. You're chewing it. You may not agree with it. You may think, I don't like that. It's okay. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm trying to read and have us learn and grow together and grow up together. I consider us siblings. I don't consider myself a parent to you. I consider us all siblings, learning and growing together like a big family of kids. And so he says, fathers, don't exasperate your children. This works in the natural because dads tend to have high expectations of their kids. But this also happens in the spirit. That's why when you choose somebody to be your spiritual father, choose carefully. Otherwise, you'll operate out of performance rather than out of presence. And some of you have been under, well, okay, go back to Roman culture. What are the priests called? Your father, right? They're called fathers. But if you didn't perform, the Roman Catholic Church would actually whip you with a stick back in the day. It was all people that, okay, let me say this. People that I've done counseling with that have gone to Catholic school or been in Catholic churches struggle more than anybody I've ever met with understanding love. Because of the amount of performance that was expected. Because the fathers exasperated the children and they've lost heart. People have always questioned my leadership style because I don't have do's and don'ts. I don't have a lot of requirements on people or even teenagers, and they question it. I don't want to exasperate them with a bunch of rules. I want a relationship with them because I want them to feel safe enough to tell me what they're really dealing with, because I believe behavior is fruit, not a root. And so with me, you'll very rarely get rules out of me. That's why last night was unique, because my son knows I don't usually demand him to come home. That was not a common practice for me to tell him to come home. I usually let him make his own decisions. But yesterday I had to make it for him, seeing what he couldn't see, which is the next 4 days of another travel experience. Because I prioritize connection over rules and regulations. And I do that with all of you. I know things about each one of you, but you're never going to hear me saying, don't drink, don't smoke, don't do this, don't do that. I don't talk like that. I want your heart. I want to know you. I want to hang out with you. I want to get to know you. And I want you to know you have access to me. And rules usually create separation, not connection. I'm not against rules. I'm not against boundaries. But just make sure they're not creating more separation than they are connection. So he says, fathers, don't exasperate your children. And then he says, slaves, in all things, obey those who are your masters on earth. Okay, this is very Roman language. Not with external service. Here's the kingdom. Not with external service as those who merely please men, but with kingdom sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Here's the thing with people that have a servant's heart, a servant gift versus a servant's heart. A servant gift can serve anyone, but a servant's heart serves everyone. Anyone with a servant's gift can serve anyone, but if you have a servant's heart, you will serve everyone. Because some people serve at church but don't serve at home. Some people serve at work but don't serve their kids. Some people serve for money, but they won't serve for love. You see, people with the gift of service will serve anywhere, but people with a servant's heart will serve anyone. And they're different. I know a lot of people with a servant gift, but they don't have a servant's heart. Because if you take away the money, you take away the accolades, you take away the title, take away the position, take away the whatever. If that thing is taken away, the gift has nowhere to operate. But if you have a servant's heart, it doesn't matter whether you're scrubbing toilets at church or whether you're preaching. If you have a servant's heart, it doesn't matter if you're serving your boss at the company or if you're serving your child. Does not matter. Here's the challenge I face. Many pastors have a servant's heart and they love serving their people, but they don't go home and serve their family. The kingdom serves everybody everywhere. And they don't feel like they're losing anything in their service if it's a servant's heart. A servant's heart never gets exhausted from serving because a servant's heart is the heart of Jesus. And it is a well that never runs dry. So I don't leak. I don't need to be filled up. I get tired, so I have to rest, but I don't leak, so I have to be filled up. You know, if you have a servant's heart, if you can let somebody cut in front of you and say, I can afford it, go ahead. Something to consider. And so it says, now, I need you to understand, verse 23 is powerful. It says, whatever you all, wives, husbands, children, fathers, slaves, and masters, the 6 groups of people, whatever you all do, do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men. Why? Because if you do it for men, you will become like the one you're serving. Some people you will serve and they will selfishly receive. If you do it unto men, you will become like the men or women you are serving. But if you do it unto the Lord, you will become like the Lord that you are serving. That's why when you give unto the Lord, not unto men, it doesn't matter what men do with what you gave, because you did it unto the Lord and you become like the Lord who is generous at all times. Because it says, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. What? Workers receive wages, servers receive inheritance. If you give to get, that's a wage. If you give to the Lord, you receive an inheritance. And an inheritance comes with a lot more than just a wage earner gets. If I go work for Uber and I hit yes, I want to accept a ride, I get a wage for picking that person up and dropping that person off. But the reward I receive is the joy of the person that I will never forget that entered the car. Because now the inheritance is humanity, not money. Does that make sense to you guys? For he who does wrong will receive the consequences of the wrong which he has done. And that without partiality. Did you know it's wrong to sow and not reap? Did you know it's wrong to be loved and to not love? Did you know that it's wrong to be forgiven and not forgive? They're going to receive the consequence of their wrongdoing, but that's not your responsibility. That's between them and the Lord. So forgive whether they forgive you. Give whether they give anything back to you. Love whether they know how to love you or not. Serve whether they know how to serve you or not. If you only do it to get something back, then you're a wage earner, not a server under the Lord seeking an inheritance. Does that make sense? Do it unto the Lord, friends. There is such a great gift that comes back. So then he goes on to say, masters, grant to your slaves justice. This is a call to the masters. Grant to your slaves, kingdom. He's talking to masters that are now in the kingdom, that have put on the new self. Grant to your slaves justice and fairness, knowing that you too have a master in heaven. This is revolutionary. It didn't change that there were masters and slaves. The culture of Rome didn't change at that moment just because they became kingdom. Some of these masters put on a new self, but were still in the role of a master. Some of these slaves put on a new self, but were still in the role of a slave. But the difference is the master's attitude to the slave, the CEO's attitude to the employee has now changed. The title didn't change. The attitude towards the person with a different title changed. It went from beating them and treating them unfairly to giving them justice and treating them with fairness, remembering they too have a master in heaven that treats them fairly and treats them justly. And then it says, devote yourselves to prayer, which seems like a complete, like, what is going on? But he continues in the same vein, keeping alert in it with an attitude of thanksgiving, praying at the same time for us as well. Now, here's how prayer relates to everything we just talked about. You have to understand that you are the lesser and God is the greater when it comes to prayer. But you need to understand that the greater has made himself equal to the lesser. So when you pray, you're not praying up to someone, you're praying face to face with someone. How many of you feel like you're praying up to some guy that you hope hears you, rather than praying face to face to a God that wants to draw near to you? Because even Jesus did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but humbled himself and became a servant and obedient, even obedient to death upon a cross. So Jesus is saying, everything I'm asking of all of you, wives and husbands, slaves and masters, parents and children, he's saying, I became equal with you. Now you become equal with each other because I'm equal with you. But I want to show you something before we end with the prayer thing, because most of the end of the chapter is just him greeting this person, that person, this person, that person. Okay. But I want to show you something in these 6 groups of people. It starts with wives and husbands. Highest level of intimate relationship you will ever have. Then it goes to parents and children. Next level of intimate relationships you'll have, one below husbands and wives. Then it goes to fathers and children. Think of that as ministry. Next level of intimate relationship. Then it goes to masters and slaves. Final level. But remember what Jesus said. I no longer call you servants, but I call you friends. Do you realize that every relationship in the kingdom of God begins as a servant to a master? Think about when you got saved. The first level of relationship God taught you was servant to master. If you come into a relationship with Jesus Christ and you don't begin with yes, sir, if you don't begin with yes, sir, you miss the fundamentals of Christianity. It's foundational to recognize who is Lord and who is not. When I first became a Christian, I was such a yes, sir woman that literally, when God said, do not, woe to those who serve mixed drinks, I did not go to school to become a bartender. That's how yes, sir, I was to him. Now I'm at a completely different relationship level with him. I read that and I know that it's not what it means. The challenge with modern day Christianity is we come in and think we're husband and wife. You're not husband and wife at the start. You're slave and master. You have a very good master. He's the best master you'll ever serve. He's benevolent, he's kind, he's generous, he's loving, he's faithful, he's just, he's fair, but he's still got to be master. Women, be like Sarah, who called Abraham, her husband, her master. Friends, we have got to teach those that come into the kingdom to start with, you are a bondservant and he is your master. In some ways, Paul never went above that title. He starts many of his books, I am a bondservant of Jesus Christ. So if you think I'm diminishing you, I'm not. You have to build this house accurately if you want this house to stand for decades. So we enter our relationship with God as bondservant to master. Then he takes us from being servant to being children. You go from servant to sonship. You are now a son who has a father. What did Jesus say? I only do what I see my Father doing. If you don't start as a servant to a master, you will never become a son to a father. First, you work for him. Servant to master. First, you work for him. Next, you become a son. A son apprentices in the house of their father. Come on, somebody. We're trying to make people husbands and wives in the kingdom, and they've never been a servant to a master. They've never been a son to a father. And we wonder why we're having so many foibles in the kingdom of God, in the church. Next level, I'm a son or a daughter apprenticing with a father. I'm learning my inherited rights. I'm learning how to be a son, which is higher than a servant, to a father. I'm still under authority, but I've been raised in my title from servant to son. Once you understand sonship with a father, then you become wives with a husband. Everybody wants to be the bride of Christ, but nobody wants to be a bondservant of his. You can't become a wife if you don't know how to be a servant. You can't become a wife if you don't know how to be a daughter. Because once you become a wife, in the kingdom of God, you're considered a queen, and there's protocol for queens. Queens don't get to do whatever they want. Just ask Vashti. So I have a hard time when people claim to be the bride of Christ before they were a bondservant of his. Before they learned how to be a son or a daughter, how to apprentice in his house. Remember the prodigal son? Give me my inheritance. I'm out. Remember the older brother? You can keep your inheritance. I want to stay in, but man, I'm pissed off at the way this house runs. The whole point of apprenticeship under a father is to learn the heart of the father. Because if you don't learn the heart of the father, you will never have the right heart to marry his son. Because his son don't marry down. His son marries across. He wants an equal. Last time I checked, he's the light of the world. Last time I checked, he's the way, the truth, and the life, and there is no darkness in him at all. Last time I checked, he's above and not beneath. Last time I checked, he's seated. He ain't wrestling with no devils. He's seated with the devil under his feet. So we can't claim to be a bride until we've been a son or a daughter. And we can't even claim to be a son or a daughter until we've been a bondservant. So everybody wants to know their identity, but they'll never know their identity as a son until they learn how to be a bondservant of the son. Stop trying to skip levels. You're skipping levels is why you're fighting devils. If you would just stay with the program, he will bring you up to where you need to be, because only he knows when you're ready. The goal is to become a wife. That's where we're headed. That's the ascension. But can I tell you a secret? You can't be a bondservant unless you're dead to yourself. Because a bondservant has no rights at all. You see why people skip the bondservant stage? They want to be a son and they want to be a wife because they want to keep their rights. And what happens is that they claim a title without a covenant. I'm telling you, I went through many years of bondservant, and I have done many years in sonship. It's only been recently that I've been elevated to wife. I think I've been a wife for about 12 years now. And in becoming a wife, I had a name change. These women that want to keep their name show me that they're not really wives. I gave myself away in 1989 when I chose to become a bondservant. I didn't become a wife until 2014. Do you see the challenge the church faces? We've taken people that have never been bondservants and called them wives. The message of the kingdom starts in the baptism of burying your old life. And everybody wants to walk through the Red Sea. They don't want to be drowned in it. I drowned in the Red Sea of his blood. And when he decided I could come out, he marked me as a bondservant. And I began a journey that has changed my life forever. And because I followed the process from bondservant to son to wife over 36 years, not hours, not days, not weeks, not months, years. And I'm still learning what it means to be a wife and the authority I've been given. I don't know it all. I've got a husband that's all knowing. Why do you think I'm subject to him? With gratitude. Because I never get elevated above bondservant or son just because my title of wife was given. I don't know where you are, but if you've never died to yourself, it's time to be buried in the Red Sea. If you have died to yourself, you may be in the bondservant stage, and you'll stay there until your will is completely submitted to the master. Once it's completely submitted to the master, you get promoted to sonship and you enter into an apprenticing. Once the apprenticeship is over, he promotes you to wife, gives you a scepter of authority, a title, a new name, and a calling that will never be revoked. And there's a security that keeps you from arguing. There is a security that keeps you from needing to be right because you carry the same heart as your husband. And he protects you, provides for you, and makes promises to you. Some go public, some remain private. And you no longer fear death because you already died so many years ago. And now you are completely and fully alive. So when you pray, you're not praying to some stranger. You're having coffee with your king. And it sounds different. It looks different. And you linger. And you love every minute of it. So he says, praying at the same time for us as well, that God will open to us a door for the word, not for us, for the word, so that we may speak forth the mystery of Christ, for which I have also been imprisoned, that I may make it clear in the way I ought to speak. Conduct yourselves with wisdom toward outsiders, making the most of the opportunity. Let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt, so that you will know how you should respond to every person. My friends, when you become a wife, you know Superman is under your shirt, even when you're looking like Clark Kent. Out in the world, you are salting every person you meet because you got a covenant with the King of Kings that cannot be broken. And even if religious people don't understand you, he knows who his bride is. And that is Colossians 4.